organizations and startups and governments are beginning to adopt this, it's actually the very beginning. And so when I think about what's happened in the last couple years, and I've been in the space since 2012, a lot has evolved. We had, cryptomania. Unfortunately, there was a lot of hype and as in any new technology, there was greed and some bad actors in 2017-18. You had a crypto crash, what they call crypto winter. A lot of governments banned crypto. Some reacted more progressively, others did not. But it was a very mixed situation from a crypto standpoint. However, from a blockchain technology adoption standpoint, the enterprises and governments have been really doing a lot of research and quietly working behind the scenes across many different industry groups. And even though it's slower in terms of growth, we have only seen a extension of blockchain technology learning, uh, experimentation and pilots, and now going into production in almost every industry category you can think of and geographies. So in fact, it's actually grown and it keeps growing. And I'm firmly of the view that that is the trend we're going to see into the next decade is increased growth and increased usage of blockchain. And the reality is the average person may not know it's running on a blockchain. And frankly, it doesn't matter to the average person as long as it works and as long as the customer experience is good or the user experience is good. But what will run in the background will be critical. And that's sort of the major industry discussions that are being had right now, which includes topics around, the so many blockchains that are existing, who's going to be dominant in certain categories, where will the interoperabilities lie, who is building the next generation digital infrastructure that everyone else is going to build on. Is it open source? Is it permissioned? Is it not permissioned? And these are all of the, what does the governance look like? And these are all the debates that are happening right now. And so as we move into 2020, there's been a shift in focus. There's been much more discussion around central bank digital currency. I have listed here CBDC and stable coins. Those two are not the same, they're different. And so uh, there's discussion now on really what is money in a data world when data is value and it can move as frictionlessly as emails move around the world. What does that look like? And what kind of challenges does that prove or show for governments that have to deal with not only their sovereign issue money, but or currency, but also now these concepts around stable coins and other kinds of tokens. And that's truly being hotly debated right now. Regulatory movement in key jurisdictions, I think there are many eyes that are still on the US as to what the US will do in terms of regulation on a number of different categories, including digital currencies, digital assets, as well as capital raising. Some people know this as ICO, initial coin offerings. These are, major areas of concern and also innovation. So it's hard. If you think about it, governments don't want to stifle innovation because they want to have more jobs and more growth of startups, but they have to protect the consumer and they have to protect against bad actors who will do bad things in situations like this. And this is the balance that many governments are trying to play right now. And then on the enterprise level, what I think is really exciting is the progress of enterprise scaling. And what I mean by that is they have moved on from doing little pilot projects, which is great. I mean, when I was at CME, we did a lot of pilots just to test things and experiment. But at some point, these projects need to graduate to production level. And we're beginning to see that. And we're going to see more of this across industries. And as I mentioned, is it the blockchain? No, it's not. It's many blockchains. And some people would argue it's too many blockchains. Everyone's got a blockchain. I think if anybody was part of the internet boom back in 98, 99, 2000, you would say almost everyone had an internet company, right? Well, everyone seems to want to have a blockchain. I'm not worried about it. I actually think it's great. Let innovation blossom, let 1,000 flowers bloom. And we will see which ones end up being the prevailing blockchains on which people will build applications. Because here's the thing, I believe that people and markets will build upon those that have the best governance, the best ability for access, and security, integrity, all of those things that you would look for in bedrock infrastructure. So I've listed a number here, but the reality is there's many more, and there will be uh, a bigger battle to be had in terms of who is actually or which ones are going to prevail. I think we're going to end up with a number of blockchains, not just one, but if they can all talk to each other and you can seamlessly move from one digital highway to the next digital highway, then it doesn't really matter if there's multiple blockchains. But I think this is an exciting time for us to see the development. I don't know if you guys saw the headlines a couple weeks ago or last week actually. Quorum was something that was incubated out of JP Morgan. Quorum has now been effectively sold to Consensus, which is Joe Lubin's uh, group. They are going to be the stewards of Quorum now in a deal partnership with JP Morgan. So that's a very interesting link up with a open source blockchain that is enterprise blockchain that's based on um, Ethereum that is now going to be supported by a tech company that is in working with a large bank. And you're going to see more of these kind of tie-ups. I think this is actually not unusual anymore. I think you're going to see more and more collaborations and combinations of groups that you didn't think would talk to each other. And when I think about what are the main key areas, especially I'm going to focus on enterprise blockchain for the moment in a COVID-19 world, I think there are major sectors to watch. There's definitely more, but these are the ones that I think are going to be really truly the hotbeds of opportunity. Education is completely been upended in almost every part of the world. Students are being forced to learn online. The U.S. is now, just so you know, pockets trying to go back to school, but they're seeing outbreaks. So now people are being sent back home. It's a very difficult situation. So what that has done is accelerated online learning and what the pros and cons of that are. And I think there's going to be some reimagining. And also, there is definitely concerns right now in the US in particular. And I don't know if this would be the case in India as well, but in the US, there's many thousands of universities and colleges that are quite expensive. And the view is that from an economic standpoint, many of these universities will not survive after COVID because of what has been going on. And frankly, there is a view that some of them need to go anyway because there's just too many universities in the US. We shall see what happens. Energy is a sector that is affects all of our lives. There's renewable energies linking up with technology. There's also um, existing oil and gas industry participants who are also innovating in blockchain and trying to create either more efficient solutions for them or tracking and tracing or the way they trade. There's lots of different use cases there. We're seeing a lot of pretty amazing companies from Japan to Europe to the US, all innovating around different aspects of blockchain. And oftentimes there's an IoT component, an Internet of Things component to the pilots that we're seeing. Financial services, I will speak about, so I'm going to just leave that there. Healthcare, as you can imagine, everyone's looking at how we can better deliver healthcare across the board, and can we actually help provide benefit by using a blockchain? Do you need to verify records? I'll give you one example just very quickly in the healthcare space that's come up a couple times. Credentialing of doctors and nurses. If you need to move doctors and nurses around the country, in the US in particular, there's actually laws around going from state to state. So if you have a license in one state, you cannot actually go to another state to practice. But because of COVID, there's been discussion around could there be a national solution that allows everyone to be registered, retired doctors to be registered under the same network and verified. And therefore, if you need doctors in one state versus another state or nurses, you can move people around in a much more frictionless way with verification that their credentials are good and true. So you can mitigate fraud and also people who have lost their licenses. And that's one of the use cases of many that we're seeing in healthcare at the moment. Government, there's a lot of different aspects where governments are trying to improve their processes and information. And we're going to see more of this. Just recently, for those of you who may not be aware, just participated in government of Tamil Nadu's voting initiative and how India should lead on voting plus national identity on a blockchain solution. And there's lots of research and discussions happening in that space. And so I think, India especially is the largest democratic country in the world, populous democratic country in the world. It is absolutely a place where India should lead on what does the future of voting look like, especially remote access, and does blockchain have a role to play there? So I think that's a very interesting area. Media, we all know about fake news now and deep fakes. There's a lot of work being done around how do you provide truth and that something is actually the source of the truth than someone that has made it up or a bot that has made it up. Again, I think it's a complex topic, but there are components where blockchain verification and is being utilized. And then supply chains. I said again, I'm going to touch upon this very quickly, but tracking and tracing has become one of the most obvious and requested areas of focus because people do want to know where did their food come from. If it's labeled organic or it's labeled something specific, how do I trust that? Am I going to just trust that the company said so or the government just said so? What if I could actually independently verify that actually came from the location that it supposedly came from? And I think there's just a lot of demand for transparency and opportunity for that. Next generation payments and banking. So I'm going to get into financial services. I hope some of you are interested in the financial services space because I think there's actually a lot of opportunity here as this sector or this entire industry evolves. And there has already been, as you know, challenges to the banks around how they operate. And for the banks that have been around for a very long time, they've already moved from the typical, you walk into a bank, you get your banking done, and then you have to walk out. You have to deal with long queues, and there's, usually delays. The payment system is not very quick. And if you go to Europe, it's not bad. It's definitely evolved. But if you go to the US, I think some of you will be surprised by how backwards the US payment system is and how long and inefficient it actually is. It's worse than when I go out to Asia and other parts of the world where mobile payments is a much more adopted and readily utilized concept. And e-money is not a surprise to people. But I think in the US, for lots of legacy reasons, and maybe even because of credit card usage or debit card usage, that behavior is very difficult to change. And so even though most banks have moved from more brick and mortar to online and to phone, there's still another step that needs to be taken for an additional evolution, which is really around how do you move data that is value around in a frictionless state. And the current, for example, payments, cross-border payments networks are incredibly inefficient still because they take time, they cost money. How many of you can move the equivalent of $10 in a manner to somebody in another country, let's say the UK, within minutes and for a few pennies? It's very difficult. It's actually, apart from a few apps that are available now, it's actually still very difficult. And most banks charge quite a lot, more than the $10 notional value. So you wouldn't do it through a bank. The only reason I have this slide here is to show you that the landscape of the brand names are changing. I think some of you may recognize a few names, particularly like London Stock Exchange Group and JP Morgan. These are, international names. Even Australia Stock Exchange and Swiss Digital Exchange. These are all, Wells Fargo Bank. These are existing names, but also you will see that there are a whole host of fintech companies, some of which you've probably never heard of, who are in the blockchain space, and they are growing. Um, I'm not sure how many of you are familiar with how big Coinbase is. Coinbase is still a private company. They were in their last round of funding, valued at 8 billion US dollars. They're looking to go IPO next year, which means their valuation will probably be double digit billions. That's a startup that was started less than 10 years ago. I think it was like 7 years ago. Um, and so these unicorns are growing in pockets, and they're dominating their categories, whether it's data analytics or whether it's payments or whether in the case of Coinbase, it started with crypto wallets, but now they're going into many other categories like loans and lending, as well as they launched an institutional trading platform. I think they're going to go into the brokerage business, et cetera, et cetera. And so you're beginning to see that some of these fintechs are growing quite quickly. And that's also the case with Revolut that started accepting crypto. Now on my Revolut digital wallet, they're based out of the UK. I have fiat currency, I have sterling, euro, dollar, and I think I have a couple other currencies, as well as my Bitcoin and other digital assets. And that's really the direction that money or the digital money is going in, which is you're going to have removal of frictions and you'll be able to use what is most efficient or most favorable to you. So consumers will have more choice, and I think that's a good thing. And so there will be many more new, names to come. I don't know who is the next um, big winner. Bitcoin was the beginning, but there are so many more companies and organizations. Some of them are not companies that are growing, and I think we are going to see more adoption and usage as the market matures. And many of you have probably heard about Libra. I'll talk about that in a second, a little bit more detail. Stable coins, I'm going to mention here because it is absolutely been on topic for a number of governments, and people are looking at this because, and I want to thank my friends over at State Street who provided this slide. But basically, a stable coin is a digital asset that's usually pegged to something else. It can be pegged to a US dollar or Indian rupee, or it could be pegged to gold. It can also be pegged to an algorithm. So we're beginning to see some very interesting evolution of stablecoins. And the question is, what do they do? Well, they're meant to allow for you to go from Indian rupee, then to another, token very easily. That is the concept. Now, whether that's happening in the real world or not, depends on which tokens or which digital assets you are dealing in. Again, this is a very early evolution of, I think, many more developments and conflicts at the moment. As you can imagine, governments are looking at this, companies are looking at this, groups of technologists are looking at this, big technology is looking at this. It's really going to be a very interesting space for the next few years. Libra, I mentioned before, and this is an old photo here, but they had launched last year, or sorry, they did not launch. They announced last year that they were launching in 2020 with a number of partners. Some of those partners have pulled out. They have some new partners, but they are based as a Swiss foundation. Libra, you could categorize as a stable coin. They will operate alongside many other stable coins, but the concept is simple. They are trying to provide increased financial access to those who are left out of the current financial system. So when we think about that, that concept is actually very good. But is it good if it's dominated by one company? And that's one of the critical things that I think people were scared about with Libra. It was incubated out of Facebook, and Facebook has 2.3 billion users around the world. 2.3 billion. No country, even the size of India or China, no individual country has 2.3 billion in their network. And so the rise of social media networks is a concern to governments because what happens when you lose influence and control? And something like Libra, if it were to become the dominant used, you know, token in the network, could it challenge the Indian rupee or US dollar or other currencies? And how does it interact with those currencies? And so from a financial stability standpoint, regulators are concerned, central banks are concerned, and I think we don't really have all the answers yet. I think it will depend on the adoption, but I'll give you this. With 2.3 billion people, if you're an entrepreneur, and even if this fails, and they haven't launched yet, by the way, they're looking to launch in a few months. They told me a couple months ago that they will be launching in 2020, so we'll have to see. And it's readily available on, WhatsApp or, a number of other digital wallets on day one. Even if they fail 1% usage, that's still 23 million people. If I'm an entrepreneur or an investor, I'll take 23 million people on day one. That's amazing. So just think about what the scale of this means. And that's really part of the reason why there is such concern is how will this be used? Who will adopt it? And will it start influencing other parts of the financial system? And so it is one to definitely watch. And don't get me wrong, it's not just Libra. There are others coming as well. So this is just the beginning. I'm going to move on to insurance really quickly, just because it's a space that nobody talks about. And yet the insurance industry is a multi-trillion-dollar industry. There is still today very little insurance offered on cryptocurrency, and which is also one of the reasons why when people ask me, why do hedge funds and asset managers and some of the big sovereign wealth funds not go into crypto? There's two reasons mainly, or three. One, the market's still very small in digital assets, but it is growing, and you're beginning to see more and more buy side go into the space. Number two, regulatory uncertainty. No institution likes to see regulatory uncertainty. So some of them are waiting on the sidelines until they understand better how the regulators are going to look at digital assets and cryptocurrencies. But the third reason why a lot of institutions have not gone in is because of the issues around insurance and custody and how are these things secured. Because if you look at financial markets today, there are clear rules around what banks need to do to hold your money, where your pension, rules around how your pension's held. When groups make investments, there are guarantees, there is insurance, there's usually some level of policy work that is required or rules that require insurance. And today, we're only seeing the beginning of it. There's a company called Evertas. They have their regulated entity out of Bermuda, who is also innovating in the insurance space. And they're based in Chicago. And they are looking at providing insurance to the crypto market, digital asset sector. And they're working with very big names in the insurance space to do that. They've done some research here. I will let you, I'm sharing the slides. So if you would like to have these, this is just for your interest. If you are interested in the insurance space, they did a survey around digital assets, crypto assets, and they've received some feedback around how difficult it is to just really understand the risks, understand how they get into it. The interest level is growing and it's higher. But from a practical standpoint, if you're an investor of a large asset manager, how do you justify investing in something that is considered very high risk if you don't have the risk mitigation infrastructure in place? So that's one of the big issues. And then I'm going to talk about taxation very quickly. Taxation is a very hot topic right now, and you might ask why. Why would tax be something that people look at? Well, the reason why is because twofold. Governments are interested in it because blockchain could help potentially through smart contracts to collect more taxes in a automated fashion. So governments are interested from an increased revenue standpoint and also transparency. If everybody knows, all citizens know where their tax dollars are going, then perhaps there's more reason to want to pay taxes as opposed to try to evade paying taxes. That's the concept. We'll see what the reality looks like. But then separately, taxation has been brought into light because many countries around the world have a very difficult time also accounting for where public funds are going. So there is a move. You can see some of the names here. It's called the Prosperity Collaborative. It's the World Bank. It's New America. It's Ernst and Young. It's MIT and Michael Dukakis Institute who are working on this. And they have a website. So if you Google um, the Prosperity Collaborative Tax Blockchain, you should be able to find website with more information if you are interested on learning more. And then global supply chain, I will talk about because it is truly something that people around the world are looking to improve. I don't know how many of you have worked in supply chains, but take anything, any product, doesn't matter. Airplanes, jewelry, you name it. The supply chains of most of these products are not transparent. They are very complicated. They go through many countries. They go through many hands. And oftentimes there are intermediaries that benefit from the back and forth of the lack of transparency. And some intermediaries, they make money off of this. So anyway, long story short, there's room for improvement. If you have 60 intermediaries blockchain infrastructure, there are questions that you can raise once you have that transparency around, does that intermediary provide the value for what you're paying? And this is something that a lot of big companies, sorry about my slides, there's a lot that big companies are asking. I'll give you an example. A company like Unilever or a bank of, Procter and Gamble, they have consumer products all in all kinds of categories that we use. Oftentimes there's 60 intermediaries between them for one product. And they want to understand better the transparency of these intermediaries as well, because they don't often have insight all the way down to the commodity level. And this is something that they're also looking at because their consumers are asking for it. So we're going to see more and more of this. And when I think about the many different types of use cases, I've just told you about one, which is tracking and tracing, but I'm going to leave this with you because there's actually many. There's identity management, there's tokenization. How do you take loyalty points and turn them into digital money, into gaming? That's already happening. Bundling services to improve customer experience. There's data analytics around managing this. Often it includes AI with blockchain. Again, blockchain itself often doesn't sit in a silo. It's usually alongside other technologies as well. And I think we have a lot of opportunities, particularly in global supply chains, that will be evaluated. And I will tell you right now, with the global pandemic, and you saw the shortages, you're going to see more discussion around how global supply chains will evolve, because there's a big rethink happening, particularly in places like the US and other countries around their vulnerability of their global supply chains. And I'm going to leave you with another one that I think we really need to think about because it has major impact. And you see here that India plays a very strong role in this, which is China's Belt and Road Initiative. Their target date is 2049. We've been working with the Kazakhstan government in learning more about how they're going to incorporate the latest technologies into this One Belt, One Road initiative. But we will definitely see that technology, digital money will have a role to play in this new world of connecting all of these countries from China all the way through to the UK and Rotterdam, Netherlands, to Spain, all the way to Mombasa and Kenya, to India. And it's going to be truly amazing once this is accomplished. And to be frank with you, you notice that the Americas are left out of this global supply chain here. And it is a concern that people are looking at and what that looks like. I don't know if that means that North America and South America will have its own sort of, one belt, one road initiative, but it's something that obviously concerns the other part of the world that is left out in this scenario. 2020 and beyond, I didn't talk much about digital identity, but here's something that most people will say to you that I know in the space, which is if we figure out digital identity verification properly, that is the gateway for providing digital wallets, digital identity management solutions, and everything else will come off the back of that. What does that mean? It means if we solve the digital identity problem with a system that is robust and secure and sound, and can be trusted, then we will be able to offer people individualized management of their healthcare records, management of their financial records, management of their academic records. Imagine a world where you do um, manage all of your personas online in a manner that is secure, as well as being able to make payments. It sounds far-fetched, but it's really not, and it's being worked on. And I gave you this slide before where I did 2017, 18, and 19, where I'm going to give you some insight into what we're thinking about 2020, 2030, 2040. This is not me looking at any crystal ball, but based on trends that we are seeing, I think we are going to see some very interesting things happen. And just a few things to think about. Data and time as value, meaning your time on social media should be paid. You should not be wasting your time on anything that is not helping you to either improve something that you are looking for, or monetizing what you are doing. This idea of data as free and only like Facebook and Google makes money off of you is being completely pushed back. And these paradigm shifts are happening today. And one of the reasons why blockchain is so interesting is because the tokenization allows for creating different models for how we interact with each other. I'll give you an example. 360-degree circular economy allows for a platform where you could have social media, but everyone gets paid. So for example, if you take your favorite actor or actress and you support her and provide marketing services by basically spreading the word about her latest film, then you will get paid in that network. Imagine a world where there is more fair and equitable incentives in place for participating in online views. So this is all being experimented on right now, but it will take some time. And I put that in the 2030 bucket. At the moment, I think we're going to start seeing who is building out digital superhighways. There's already debate about, China announced their BSN blockchain network that they're trying to make international and have others build. I don't know if India has its own, ambitions to do this, but the reality is that most likely the one that's going to win is the one that is open source, open access, secure, and allows for governance of many different groups, not just one. And that's what we're advocating for. So again, there's many other things that we could discuss, but I'm running out of time, so I'm just going to go through this. There are risks and benefits. One of the biggest risks I spend a lot of my time on is if we recreate GAFA, and I'm not sure how many of you have seen GAFA before. It's Google, Apple, Facebook, Amazon, and I add Alibaba in there. If we create only 5 or 6 giants, to me, as a society, we have failed again. We need to redistribute the opportunity set around the world. We need to have not just 1 or 2 hubs, but we need multiple thousands of hubs around the world that have opportunity for everyone. And I think this is something that blockchain can do if we allow for the proliferation of opportunities around the world. And that's where we spend a lot of our time, is how can we help create opportunities of this technology, not just in one location, but also in many, many, many small countries and places where entrepreneurs don't usually get funding or have access to investment. One final thing I'm going to leave you with are initiatives that we are working on. Standards is also a major issue. If we don't have standards, it's going to be very hard to scale. Every technology in the world that has really truly been adopted had some sort of standards. And so we've linked up with the Milken Institute and the World Economic Forum and MIT in particular to create the Global Mapping Initiative of 2020, Global Standards Initiative. So we're looking at technical standards, business consortia, legal and regulatory standards around the world. We will be launching this report and website in October of 2020. It's coming up next month. And we will have it free access to anyone who would like to have access to the data and the reports. There will be no fire or paywall, or it's going to be completely open and available to everyone. So look out for that. And we've got a lot of great partners who've helped from around the world. And then I want to leave you with a positive note. You know, job losses have happened in the millions all over the world. But when I look at blockchain, I always test to see where we are. I just Google blockchain. This is just LinkedIn as one metric. And I click on worldwide. And we're at about 11,648 jobs around the world available on LinkedIn. And that's from a couple days ago. That back in November before COVID was more like 15,000. But when I think about it, it's not bad. It's actually recovered because I saw the number at like 10,000 before. It's recovering and it will continue to recover. And I expect soon that we might be able to see 20,000 jobs available worldwide in blockchain. Just to give you a sense, when I was at CME and I would click on blockchain and search under LinkedIn back in 2014, it was almost no names. Nobody used the word blockchain. And this is what we've seen even in the last 5, 6, 7 years is an explosion. It's only going to continue. So there's much opportunity in the digital economy space. But I do leave one more final thought, which is we had a meeting with the Vatican back in September, and there are many religious leaders around the world. And it doesn't matter whether you are religious or not. It's something that they're asking technologists to really think about is the digital divide. If we keep innovating and we keep building as technologists and entrepreneurs and innovators, and we leave behind billions of people who have no access to information and the internet, what have we done as a society? And so the common good in reducing the digital divide is also something that is very top of mind in our work. And we are looking to work with groups that are trying to make sure that we provide basic levels of closing the gap, aka internet access, all the way through to education and making sure that people are not left behind, because it's no longer okay to not have access. And with the ability for mobile phones, it is possible. And so I leave you with that as technologists and builders to think about how we make sure that we don't leave billions of people behind in the process. Thank you for your time. I actually think I may be out of time, so I will leave it to Dr. Martin to let me know what you want to do about any questions. I know there were a few, but I appreciate your time. Dr. Martin? Hello? I was just saying that we're probably over time, so maybe I should just wrap up.
Hello, madam. Thank you, madam. Thank you for your wonderful presentation. Audience have raised some queries. I'll read out one by one, madam. First one is there a global standard on the blockchain-based security and data sharing, or at least working on a common body across world to work on blockchain norms for data transfer across countries?
Yeah, that's the problem right now is there is no global standard, which is why we launched this global standards mapping initiative is step one. We are literally at step one. We're going to take all of the work that everyone has done around the world and we're putting it in one place. and then we're identifying where are the gaps, what else do we need to do, what are the conflicts, because it's been very fragmented. The number one conclusion I will tell you right now, whether it's technical or regulatory and legal, is fragmentation. Everyone's been doing their own work in their little silos. It's like, imagine everyone's sitting in a cubicle and they've been doing their own work and nobody's talking to each other. So what we're trying to do is bring all the work together and then say, okay, how can we arrive at consensus? We're not going to agree on everything for sure. You can expect disagreements, but how can we have a base layer of commonality?
Thank you, madam. Then one more question. What are the drawbacks of the bitcoins or digital wallets? Why many countries denying for its approval?
For Bitcoin,
Yes, madam. Bitcoin.
for one of the big challenges, I think, and look, I come from the banking sector where I think if before the financial crisis in 2008, I think most people probably didn't even think about their financial institutions or the government in terms of are they going to go bankrupt tomorrow. I think with the financial crisis, it raised a lot of questions around whether a big bank could go actually under. I mean, it was a pretty scary time. The whole banking sector looked like it was going to just go away. Um, when Bitcoin came, it was, I think, the right time to question for people, what is money to you? What is value? And if you can move it around in a digital world, like I said, email, think about how easy email is. But when email first came out, everybody said, why do we need email? That's just stupid. Why would anyone send email? Well, now everyone sends email. It's almost similar concept with Bitcoin. People said, well, why do you need that? We don't need that. But now more and more people are asking, why can't I move money around as easily and cheaply as um, rupees or dollars? But it's actually not that easy to move around. And so there is a challenge around Bitcoin or fiat currency. But my view is very simple. It will coexist. I think government backed currencies will continue to exist. They will just be electronic or digital now, going forward over time. Uh, but there will also be room for tokens of different kinds for different purposes. And the question is, how will governments treat this coexisting relationship? And I think every government's different.
Yeah. Thank you, madam. Then which one is the best Bitcoin or digital wallet?
Huh? Sorry?
Which one is the best Bitcoin or digital wallet? Best
Ah,
Bitcoin.
okay. Yeah, sorry. So I'm not going to tell you what Bitcoin or digital wallet to go and get because I think it depends if you are holding Bitcoin and Ether and many other tokens, you need one that is accessible for many tokens. There are some wallets that are only Bitcoin. You could look at companies like Blockchain, which is an actual company in the UK. The blockchain wallet is been around for a very long time. What I look for is something critical, which is what is your biggest potential problem? Your biggest potential problem is the private key. So if you take a wallet and open an account where you have to hold the private key, that is the most secure. But that means if you lose your wallet, you lose your private key, nobody will be able to help you get it back. There's just nothing in place right now, which means you have to be responsible. However, if you don't think you want to be the one holding your private key and you want to give it to what they call a hosted wallet, then the hosted wallet provider will hold your private key. But think about what you just did. You just now gave the power of your wallet to somebody else. If you're comfortable with that and they're not going to get hacked and they're not going to lose your private key, then it's fine. But you have to think about that. And to me, that's the big distinction of which wallet you will choose. You have to do your homework around that.
Yeah, nice explanation, madam. Thank you, madam. Thank you. Then one more question, madam. What is the latest on interoperability of different blockchains? Interoperability of different blockchains.
Yeah, so there's a lot of work being done around interoperability. For those who are interested, please follow the Linux Foundation Hyperledger work. Also follow what is going on with the Ethereum community, with the Ethereum Foundation. There's a lot of discussion at the moment around interoperability. There's also the Polkadot project. There's also Cosmos. So if you Google any of these blockchains, you will find the interoperability work that they are doing. But again, there's many different projects. So we do not have one unified interoperability solution yet, but that's fine. Many people are working on it, and there are many smart people who are looking and finding solutions around different technical challenges. We will get there. It will just take some time.
Yes, madam. Then in insurance domain, what kind of impact the blockchain can create? In insurance domain, what kind of impact the blockchain can create?
What kind of impact will the blockchain create for society?
In insurance domain, madam, insurance.
Oh, insurance.
Yeah.
Okay. So for anybody who works in insurance, you might know insurance is the most conservative, the slowest to innovate. They don't like change at all. And yet we all probably touch insurance at some point in our lives, whether we like it or not. So what is happening is two different things. One is insurance industry is being pushed, just like banking industry is being pushed to change, and that is a very difficult thing. And luckily, the one benefit for the insurance industry and why they should change is because we can help reduce fraud. And if you can help reduce fraud, then they lose less money. If they can lose less money to fraud, then they are incentivized to reduce everybody's premiums. If they can reduce everybody's premiums, then customers are happy. So this is one of the incentives for them to want to change and to also use blockchain. Another one is I mentioned before, the crypto digital markets are growing, and digital assets is including everything from tokenization of physical things like real estate all the way through to Bitcoin. And so when you think about digital assets, it's still very small compared to like foreign exchange markets, but it is growing. It is growing. And so the insurance market is also beginning to look at, how can I make money here? And so you will start to see changes from two, three very different perspectives for the insurance industry.
Yeah, thank you, madam. Thank you. It's a nice answer, madam. Then one more question is, how does the blockchain impact the education domain?
Yeah, there's going to be so many changes in the education domain, not just because of COVID, but because there was already mixing of um, online versus in classroom. And all of you probably have an opinion whether you prefer in classroom or you like online. Some people like online, some people don't. But one thing that blockchain will do is remove some frictions. I'll give you one use case that I really like. And this is something I don't know if it's possible or you already have in India, but it's something I think that could be possible if every institution were to implement this. So in the United States, if you want to transfer from one school to another school, you have a big problem. Why? I'll give you one example in Arizona, the state of Arizona. If you went to the community college in Arizona, you have credits. And Arizona State University is a big university. They will accept your credits, but they didn't have any kind of system to do this efficiently. So many students would transfer their credits and it would get messed up. So then they spend all of this time on admin, correcting. This university had to spend time, all manual. Everything was manual. So guess what? They worked with Salesforce to pilot a blockchain based solution that allowed for community college transfer credits would get verified at the community college level. Then the Arizona State would receive it. Arizona State would then verify and confirm that they have accepted the credits, and then the credits would be attributed to the student so that everything is auditable, recorded, good record keeping, electronic, all that good stuff. And both the University of Arizona State and community college could share that securely and privately. So again, this is one example only, but many schools are looking at how do we make this network more useful, because if every student who transfers can have a good record, then it'll be easy for them when they move to other schools and to keep a record for their personal life. So when they go back to school down the road, they have a record of every single class that they took and also the credentials. So guess what? You don't need to show a paper diploma anymore. You can have a QR code or some kind of encrypted hash of your degree, so that also people who are lying and faking their degree can also be discovered, because you can only receive a encrypted degree once you have actually been issued by the university. So these are things that are being looked at many different universities around the world. We're working with one in the Middle East, and also the US has several universities that are looking at issuing cryptographic hashes of the actual degree, so you can have it on your phone. Imagine that.
Yeah, yes, madam. Thank you, madam. Thank you. Actually, a lot of questions are there. I have taken only the important questions, and a lot of appreciations are given, shared by the participants. They are very happy and very informative session, very wonderful talk. Thank you, madam. Thank you very much. Really, it's a very fortune for us to have you on our international webinar. We enjoyed, we enriched our knowledge with the blockchain, and we came to know that the recent trends in the blockchain and different applications, especially in the education, insurance, and different sectors. Really, it's a wonderful section. You delighted us. Thank you, madam. Thank you very much for being with us and sharing the various facts about blockchain. On behalf
Well,
of
thank
our,
you. Dr. Martin, thank you and the entire team at Central University for the invitation. And for any of you who are interested, you can sign up to our website and our newsletter for free. And there's a lot of free information on our website. That is what we do. We provide as much good information as possible to anyone who is interested for free. So please reach out, follow us on LinkedIn and Twitter if you are on Twitter, and we appreciate it. Thank you very much.
thank you, madam. Thank you very much. Thank you. Dear participants, feedback link has been shared. You can start to fill the feedback link. It is open till 10 o'clock. The need not hurry up. We have asked the feedback for both of the sessions. Thank you very much for patiently you waited for the end of the session. So we hope that both of the sections may be very much informative for you. One is about text processing and another one is about blockchain. So I hope that it might have very much useful for you. Please share your feedback in the feedback link which is given here. Tomorrow there is no any change as usual. The session starts by 2:45 p.m. and tomorrow we will be sharing the link and resource person details to you. Already we shared it. Just for a gentle reminder, we will be sharing the links tomorrow. Thank you very much. Thank you very much for being with us. Thank you, students, coordinators. Thank you, all the faculties of Department Computer Science for being with us and the successful conduction of the webinar.